it's my year, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my.
Welcome back to another episode of A Cup of bELieve. Today we have a special guest. Ryan Clark is a former football safety who played 13 seasons in the NFL. An all-SEC defensive back who started 36 consecutive games at LSU, nonetheless went undrafted in 2002. Ryan was signed by the New York Giants as an undrafted free agent in 2002. Clark also played for the Pittsburgh Steelers and now the Washington Commanders and won a Super Bowl ring with the Steelers. Ryan, it's a pleasure to have you. You know you're my brother, and I'm glad that you're a part of this episode today. And can't wait to dive into this conversation.
What's up, E, man? I'm excited to be here, brother. I'm glad we got all of my technical issues fixed. Tell Miss Bianca that I'm very sorry for making her go through all of that, man. But I'm just excited to be here. I'm also very grateful that you decided to sit with the pivot. So an opportunity to repay that favor, man, is something that I would do without question.
I appreciate that. And I know that you have been telling a lot of people's stories now throughout the year. I know you guys recorded over 100 episodes, but now I want to talk a little bit about your life and your story and give you that platform to talk a little bit about yourself, because I know back in 2002 when you're transitioning from college and trying to get to the NFL, obviously going as an undrafted free agent, but there was a job that you were talking about getting before, you're thinking about getting into coaching, but also working with the Tiger Athletic Fund. Can you tell us about those days and how you were
Yeah,
trying to figure out what life was going to be
yeah.
like?
Well, you know what happens, man, is like we don't always get our opportunity to pick our professions or to pick the things that people allow us to pursue. And you know it as well as anybody. Sometimes life throws a little wrench in your plan, or you come to a fork in the road. Maybe not as extreme as the adversity that you faced, but for me, it was being undrafted. It was being cut. And so I worked at the Tiger Athletic Foundation. I walked upstairs to Will Muschamp to ask about being a graduate assistant. And I remember I had just gotten married and I was leaving Will Muschamp's office. And the night before, I was reading a book called The Power of a Praying Husband. And in reading that book, it said anything that you don't pray about, you leave up to chance. Anything that you don't put before the Lord, you're leaving up to chance, man. So I remember getting on my knees on a Tuesday night. And on that Tuesday night, I prayed. I was like, God, I just want a chance to play again. I want another opportunity. And so I'm walking from Muschamp's office. I get a call from my agent, and I had a workout with the Washington Commanders at the time. Obviously, it was a different name. And it was the day before camp. Sean Taylor gets injured, hurts his knee. Another guy tears his ACL. I go to the tryout. I wasn't even the guy they picked. Some dude ran a 4.3 at a tryout. Who in the hell runs a 4.3 off their couch? You know what I mean? And so they picked that dude. He fails the physical. And so now, at this time, we got flip phones. So now I'm in the airport. They're trying to reach me. I don't have service. So I end up going back, man. I got cut, at least by TV, during that camp. And I was the last name that was cut. I was reading Job in the Bible at the time. And if anybody's ever read Job, they understand all the things that Job was going through, but he wouldn't cuss or curse God. And my wife is all mad because she loves me to death. And she's like, that's unprofessional that they cut you, not tell you. And I remember, man, I got on my knees and I thanked the Lord for an opportunity because that's what I asked for. And like I was ready to go on with life. Fast forward to the next morning, I bring my bags in. I'm waiting for somebody to call me to send me home. And Greg Williams, who was the defensive coordinator at that time, and Greg uses very colorful language, he was like, mother effer, if I was picking the team today, you'd effing make it. F those. And he's like, bleep, 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 bleep. But that was kind of the day, E, that I found out I was going to make the team. And it was the first cuts. And obviously I had to keep doing what I was doing to that point, man. But there were so many times that things could have gone another way. And I was prepared for that. But, nothing was more. I'm no more grateful for anything in my life than those 13 years I got to play in the NFL.
Well, but obviously going into that, you have to have the right mindset being in that undrafted free agent role, but having to be able to accept failure at the time. But then when that opportunity presents itself, bouncing back into being able to say, all right, this is my moment now. This is where I have to shine. Take me into those, into that locker room when you now have that opportunity to make the team, and now you obviously don't want to mess up because you know how tight that string may be. So talk about what
uh,
it's like now in that locker room as a rookie.
so I've explained it before. I had a guy messaged me and asked me what was my mindset. And I'm going to see if I could, because I typed it, I'm going to see if I could say it. I took the field every single day knowing that I belonged, knowing that I was good enough, knowing that I was talented enough, that I'd worked hard enough, that I was smart enough, that I was tough enough, all of those things. Every day I took the field knowing I belonged. And then I also took the field knowing that no one else in that entire building knew what I knew. Right. And so what I mean by that is if they knew I belonged, they would have drafted me. If they knew I belonged, they would have never cut me. If they knew I belonged, I would have never been at the Tiger Athletic Foundation. I would have never been asking Will Muschamp for an opportunity to be a graduate assistant. So I knew that they didn't think that way about me. I knew they didn't see me that way. So every day I had to go out and prove that to them. But I couldn't believe that, right? Like I couldn't question myself. I couldn't be on the field with Santana Moss. I couldn't be on the field with Chris Cooley. I couldn't be on the field with Sean Taylor thinking that I wasn't supposed to be there. And the same when I was in New York for 2 years with Sean Williams and Will Peterson and Will Allen and, Jeremy Shockey. I had to think that I was supposed to be there, but I also had to prove it every day. And that was the way I worked. And honestly, that was the way I worked for 13 years until I retired. But it was being undrafted that made me feel those ways. And I think put that type of grind in me that ended up helping me be as successful as I was in the NFL.
And I love to talk about this too because we're going to get into your career, obviously, life after football. But you made the decision to start transforming into TV during your playing career, towards the end of your playing career. And a lot of times there's a perception between the athletes and the media. And you know how athletes don't get along with the media. The media puts out reports and things of that nature. What was it like still playing, but then being able to have to go on TV and comment on playing about it, then go back to the locker room and guys are like, yo, what you talking
Yeah.
about, bro?
Yeah, man, like that was part of it. And so it helped that I played for the Pittsburgh Steelers and it wasn't as acceptable as it is now. Everybody has a podcast now, right? Draymond has a podcast, Jalen Ramsey has a podcast, the Kelsey brothers have a podcast. And so there are all these different avenues and platforms that have now started because the media is now player driven. At that time, it wasn't. It was about the analyst, it was about the journalist, the journalism, and all of these different things. And so when I started doing it, it was a little bit taboo. And when you become the first active football player to have a TV contract, and it's a big deal because it's never happened. And it wasn't like I was Ronnie Lott, you know what I'm saying? I wasn't Troy Polamalu, so I wasn't going to be a Hall of Famer. I wasn't this name that carried all of this cachet. What I was good at the actual job. And ESPN saw that and other agents saw that. And so they gave me an opportunity to do it. And I remember we were 0-4 the first year I was doing it. And I had to go to Bristol to ESPN during our bye week. And I was asked questions about one, why we sucked so bad. And two, something that Ben Roethlisberger had said at the time. I'm a captain, right? Ben's a captain. And I get back in the locker room and he questions me about it. He's like, why would you say that? I said, well, here's why I said it. I said, and I didn't say it in a negative way about you, but Ben was saying he has to make sure he doesn't try to do too much to help us. And I was saying he absolutely has to do that. I said, but we got to help him too. I said, we got to play better. I said, if we're playing better defensively, he doesn't feel that way. If we're catching the ball, if we're running the ball better around him, he doesn't feel that way. But also for him, he has to work on that. And he felt some type of way about it. But the one thing about me is, and it was then and it's now, just ask me. Like I'm not one of them dudes, even though now I'm super part of the media, at the time I was a player. And even now I try to approach it as a player. Bro, I've been tapped on the shoulder by like defensive linemen who wanted to have one-on-one conversations with me. And as we're walking to have the conversations, I'm looking at him like, okay, where's my win? Like, can I take him down and try to submit him? Can I choke him out? Do I have to pick up this chair and hit him if he feels some type of way about what I said? And I remember a guy said, during a segment, you were a part of a segment that talked about me negatively. And I remembered the segment And I said, well, this is what I said. I said, and I can say that to you. And he ended up confusing me with somebody else that was on there because we were all together. You know what I'm saying? But like at that time, I was willing to stand on my word, bro, because I'm not going to say something I don't mean and that the film doesn't say. And I think that's part of my responsibility to the job, but to also the people who now sit in the same chair that I sat as a player.
Do you feel that most of the teammates respected you for that because you went and gave your real thoughts and you kept it 100 with them the whole time? And obviously, yes, they're going to be like, yo, why are you talking about me like that? But at the end of the day, do you feel like you earned their respect because you were just talking about what you felt and you were being real about it?
You know what? I don't think I ever cared about their respect as far as me doing that job. The respect I cared about was the respect you feel for me in this locker room, right? The way I work, the way I put it on the line every time the whistle blows, how I lead within this locker room, my integrity, my honesty, my loyalty, my ability to have your back. So all those things were the things I cared about in the locker room, whether or not like they appreciated the way I did or I was starting to build my second career or working on plan B. That was never truly a concern for me because I didn't feel like everybody could understand it. You know, it was just such a new thing. I was never going to air anything that was locker room talk, right? That were
Yep.
things I felt should be kept in the locker room. If it wasn't something that could be seen on film that was said publicly, then I wasn't talking about it. And I think that was part of why I never really had to be concerned about what people thought or what people saw because I always approached it in that way.
And I respect that. See, and obviously, we know you play for three different NFL teams, but we know you as a Pittsburgh Steeler and with your 7 seasons with them. Talk a little bit about that organization. Obviously, they have that grittiness, the
Yeah.
toughness as Pittsburgh Steeler defense, but it's an expectation that you have to live up to every single day when you walk into that locker room, into that office. So,
Mm.
tell me a little bit about the Steelers organization and how that changed you and shaped you as a man.
Well, I think the sport shapes you as a man, and
Mhm.
who you are as a man allows you to play the sport. I believe those things go hand in hand. What was great about Pittsburgh was it was all about ball and it was about family, and you don't necessarily get that everywhere you go in the NFL. Pittsburgh is about their sports teams, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Those are the things that those members of that community care about. And so it was great to know that every Sunday, everyone in that city, everyone in that state, everyone in that town would be tuned in to see what you were doing and tuned in to support you. And now there was the expectations of excellence that carried, and so that also carried a responsibility of responding in the correct ways when it came to playing for them, man. But I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the toughness. I love that they cared about people that worked hard, that it wasn't just about how flashy you were. It was about how much can you add to this team, to this organization, and how does that help them win another Lombardi trophy? And when that's the focus, and you're a guy like me who's a grinder, that's a place you can become a star, right? That's a place you can become a valued member of the team. And I think I was able to do that. And when you win a championship in a place and you have all those 12 win seasons and you're the number one defense, the amount of times that we were, you build some of these lifelong relationships that winning and working helps you build, whether it's Troy Polamalu or Ike Taylor or Brian McFadden or James Harrison or Brett Kiesel, the relationships that we all have, and even the relationship we have with defensive coordinator and Hall of Famer Dick LeBeau is all about the way we represented one another, the way we felt about one another, played for one another, and the amount of successes we were able to have. And then to be led by a man like Coach Tomlin for 7 of my 8 years there, and to be able to build that friendship and to continue to have that friendship with him and those sort of relationships, I think those are things that are immeasurable and that are priceless in the sense of the job that we get to do.
And I feel like sometimes people take it for granted when it becomes the norm to win all the time that
Mm,
people don't always, see like or get the respect that people deserve, like Coach Tomlin, as you mentioned,
mm.
and all the winning seasons that he's had at Pittsburgh. But obviously, everyone's like, it's either Super Bowl or bust because of those
Yeah.
winning expectations that are put on people that sometimes when you come up short, it's like, wow, this person did all this, but they're not winning the Super Bowl. And people get mad at that. But then when you actually look back and reflect on it, you're like, look what that person has built. Look at the
Hmm.
lives that that person has changed. And obviously, you know Coach Tomlin a lot more than I do. But can you talk a little bit about Coach Tomlin, the man
Man,
himself?
man, I love that dude, bro. Just who Coach Tomlin is as a man is so dang consistent. And I think consistency is one of the more underrated characteristics of a leader. To continue to be the same way through the highs, through the lows, through the ups, the downs, through adversity, and continue to be able to deliver a message to a group of men who are looking to you for leadership every single day. He was able to do that. And then he was able to go beyond that level of leadership into relationship and to have these individual relationships with different men and different players that were the relationships that were built organically between those two, but also the relationships those players needed or that player needed in order to be his best self every day within that locker room. And when you're a young coach, which Coach Tomlin was, he was close to the age of some of our older players when he took over that team. And coming into that coaching cycle, he wasn't the number one name or the guy that was targeted as the hot target or the hot prospects or the hot coach coming up in the line of coaches, and to go win that job with the Rooney Rule being what it is, with the Rooney family being the owners of that team, and to reward that organization with the Super Bowl in year two, to go to another Super Bowl in year five, to now be a decade and a half plus into coaching and to have never had a losing season. What he's been able to accomplish within that organization doesn't get talked about enough. Coach Tomlin, right now, today, if he never coaches another game, is a Hall of Fame coach. And then you look at the other side of him and the way he is with his family, how he shows up for his sons in college now on game days that he can make, the way he would travel the camps in the circuit with Dino and his boys. I think that is just amazing that he's been able to do what he's been able to do, but also he's been able to continue being the man that his mother raised in Virginia, and to still be that same human, I think is one of his greatest accomplishments.
Absolutely. And not everyone gets to raise that Lombardi trophy. And you're one of them, obviously, that has. We see those Super Bowl parades. We see how fun it is and that excitement. What was Super Bowl 43 like for you? Like after winning
Whew.
that and being on the top of the world, your dream come true? What was RC doing during those parades and during those moments?
Just spending them with the people that matter. To be honest, I posted a picture. It was a memory that the Steelers posted of the parade, and it was Troy and myself sitting on top of the truck, and my son was standing up in the sunroof. Like those are the things that you remember. I remember I would bring him because I spent so much time working and studying. I would bring him on Saturday for the walkthrough, and he'd hang out in the locker room, and he'd come to the field, and he'd play. And then one day, Coach Tomlin was like, "Jordan, come break us down." And this was toward the end of the season, and he breaks us down, and we win. And so, football teams are superstitious, or at least we love regimen. And so we did it again. And then so we did it for the walkthrough in the playoffs, and we just kept doing it, kept doing it. And on the Saturday before the Super Bowl, because I'd always bring Jordan, we took a bus. We took buses from the hotel, and everybody got to bring family members. And then there's a picture on that day in our little book we got after we won the Super Bowl of us holding Jordan up and him breaking us down. Like that's a memory that my son will always have, that I'll always have with him. And so finally winning the Super Bowl for me was relief. The year before that was the year I got sick. It was the year, I was in the hospital for a while. I lost, some organs. I lost over 45 pounds. I think the thing that I lost that hurt the most was Sean Taylor was killed. You know, he's one of my closest friends. And so there was so much loss in the year before that it made me grateful for everything. And though winning the Super Bowl was the icing on the cake, you know, just to finally reach that pinnacle. But I was an undrafted dude, man, that the year before almost lost his life, you know, and that was playing every day that year for my friend who, as far as at least for the football world, would have been much better off. The football world would have been much better off having my friend being able to play football rather than me. And so I played for him. And, you know, to win it was great, man, but to still be blessed enough to be there and to shoot, honestly, to not lose it, I was just grateful. I was relieved, and I wanted to share it with the people that got me through what was the worst year of my life before. You know, my wife, my babies, my parents, and so like that's what it was about for me. You know, sharing it with everybody.
And that's the perfect transition because I wanted to dive a little bit into that because obviously, my life changed on October 16th, 2010. But you did have that scary moment in October of 2007 where you did almost lose your life and you had to go through a lot of, like you said, losing your organs and the sacrifice that you made playing the game of football. Please, if you don't mind, take us back into
Yeah,
those dark moments, man. And believe me, I
yeah.
know what it's like being in the hospital and going through the struggle. Your mind is all over the place, and one
the
minute you're on top of the world, and then next you don't know where your life is taking you,
yeah.
man. It's tough.
You know what, E? And I have to say this to you, man. When you were on the pivot and I was listening to you and your spirit about everything, I was like, man, I ain't never complaining ever again. I was like, he's so dang positive, and so I want you to keep that. You know, man, like I went to Denver and played before, and I was sick that time, and they misdiagnosed me because they didn't get it to like the end of the week, and they
Mhm.
diagnosed it as a spleen contusion or something or another. So I wasn't really tripping about going. I'm leaving the house, and I tell my wife, I was like, "Oh, I hope I don't hurt my spleen." Like I'm joking, like a dummy, you know what I mean? And then I'm getting on the plane after the game, and I tell the trainer, his name was Ryan too, oddly enough. I was like, Ryan, my spleen's hurting. And he kind of laughed at me and goes, well, how do you know? And I was like, because it's happened before. And they send the doctor up to the front of the plane. You know, he taps on me a little bit. He takes me off. And then I remember, man, they sent me home from the hospital with some pain pills. I had what's called a spleen infarction. And I kept calling my wife and telling her, I was like, something is wrong with me, like really wrong with me. And man, I remember I couldn't get comfortable. So this is Denver, late October, so it's cold. So I turn the AC all the way down. I take a cold shower, and then I lay on the floor in the bathroom naked because I was thinking to myself, if I could just numb myself enough, maybe I could take the pain. And I call my wife, and she's like, "No." It's like I'm calling the doctor now. So I call the doctor. I go back to the hospital. They fly my family out the next day. They fly me back home in 2 days, and the doctor kept telling me I should be okay. And man, we're running tests, bro, and I'm losing weight every day. I'm waking up every night with 102, 103, sometimes 104 fever. We're changing the sheets on my bed. That there's one day, man, like I actually say the prayer, like I think I'm dying, like I'm shaking, and all these things go on. And so back to prayer again. I just prayed that God would give me some, you know, just some sort of way that I can understand what's going on with me. And I prayed about it. And I called this doctor who had seen me like 4 times. And I said, hey, I was like, I think I need another test. And he goes, you could tell he's kind of like just tired of me at the time, right? And he's like, all right, fine, I'll set it up, go. So I go, I take the test. He calls in like an hour or two, calls my wife, and he said, where are you? And he's like, it's somebody with the kids. And she's like, yeah, my mother-in-law's there. He's like, turn around right now. Don't go pack a bag. Go to the hospital. He's like, they're waiting for you outside. So we turn around, man. We go to the hospital. Turns out I had an infection. And so my spleen was four times the normal size. And so they were trying to figure out what the infection was for days, man. I had one procedure, which is basically like a minor surgery that you're supposed to sleep through. And I wake up in the middle, and the doctor looks at me. He's like, can you take the pain? And I was like, should I be able to? And he's like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess. And so I take it, and I sit there through hours of it. And it turns out I probably shouldn't have been able to, but my football brain said if he says I should, then I should. And I remember, man, my doctor looked just like Tom Brady. I used to call him Dr. Tom, Dr. Tom Brady, which I felt like was a sign I was going to die because I was like, why would a dude look like Tom Brady be my doctor? And
Come on, bro.
yeah, man. And he walks into the bathroom one morning. I was on the floor and I was crying. My wife was with me because I was really, really sick. And he's like, F it, man, I'm taking you. So he takes me to surgery, takes out my spleen. It takes like longer than they thought. Like a month later or so, they take out my gallbladder. And, I just remember, though, after they took my spleen out, maybe a day or two, Sean got shot. And, so for me, it was that moment of like, God spared me, you know?
Mhm.
It was the grace of God that I'm here and I should live that way. And man, that's what kind of led into '08 and then just led into the rest of it. And that's a testimony that I'll get to have the rest of my life that, he chose me to be here for a reason. And I got to keep living that reason.
It's funny how when we're in our darkest moments, our toughest times, with the things that we draw inspiration from. Obviously, you just talked about your Sean lost his life, but you're going through this. I'll never forget being laid up in that hospital bed and seeing a girl get rushed through the ICU, and all of a sudden she died on the operating table that
Mm,
day. And I saw her family and her friends and all these 15, 16-year-old kids walking by my room at 4:30 in the morning, hysterically crying. And in my head, I'm like, you know what? God, you gave me another opportunity to live. That girl, unfortunately, she does not. I'm going to do whatever I can to make the best of my life. And it's just that when you just said that to me, it brought me right back to that moment. Just tubes coming out of me every which way, but still
man,
being drawn up for that inspiration to be able to keep on going forward. But obviously, a lot of kudos to you, and we all go through our struggles and our battles. But to be here each and every day, obviously, every day above ground is a good day. And
man.
I, it's, I'm thinking about it's nuts now. But I really want to transition into this now because let's talk about life of Ryan Clark after football. Honestly, we see you on ESPN now every single day. Or was
Too much.
you're popping up all
Too
over the
much.
place. I'll tell you what, man, you're killing it. It's great to see, and every time you're on the TV, it's like everyone has to stop what they're doing and listen to what you have to say because your interesting perspective on how you relate to certain topics, the way that you're able to, talk about things that a lot of people aren't comfortable talking about. What is that like now for you working with ESPN and being able to talk football and being able to talk life just in general?
Yeah, I mean the football part's easy, to be honest. Like I
Mhm.
love football. I'd watch it anyway. I'd talk about it all the time anyway, whether it was on the phone with the homies, at the house with my son, or
Mhm.
my pops. So I think that's cool. The life part of it is more important to me. Being a part of 2016, 2017, and the initial social justice movements, and you fast forward that to 2020 and where it was, and the fact that I was consistent in my stance and where I was, and in 16 and 17, nobody wanted to let me talk. And then now in 2020, my voice was the most important voice because it was the
Mhm.
voice that people wanted to hear at the time. But for me, I just considered the fact that I was always the same. I was always authentic. I never betrayed myself. I never betrayed my thoughts. And I think those things are important. And every time you get an opportunity to speak life into certain situations, it's a blessing. And a lot of days I have to pinch myself, both probably negatively and positively, because I'm like, people actually care what the hell I say. Like that blows my mind. It blows my mind, one, that positively you can draw something from it and feel good about something I do or say. And then even negatively, like I can say something to piss you off that much about the
Mhm.
Bills, like I don't get it. But I think like that's the gift and the curse of it. And in
Mhm.
truth, that's what you want. I know Kanye is not necessarily the person we should draw inspiration from right now in some
Mhm.
walks of life. But Kanye has a lyric that I think is something that people should pay attention to. He says, everybody feels a way about Ye, but at least they feel something. And Like I've had so many conversations with people, and they're like, "Why do you talk bad about the Saints? You hate the Saints," because I'm from New Orleans, you know. And I always tell them, "No, I actually nothing the Saints, which is worse." Right? Like I don't care either way. I don't care if they're good. I don't care if they're bad. I'm gonna speak about them unbiasedly in the way I want to because I nothing them. Like I have no feeling toward them at all. But you don't want people to feel that way about the way you do your job or about the things that you say. And so for me to be able to have that sort of impact and for people to actually place a value on the things that I feel and the things that I say, that's a blessing. And that's, God putting me in the right opportunities to speak, and then me taking advantage of those opportunities by being prepared for them and being willing and not being fearful of what could come of it.
Well, the biggest thing that stood out to me is that night of Damar Hamlin's situation, the injury when he went down on that football field, and you had to do the Scott Van Pelt show that night. And
Mm,
at that time, everyone that was watching just around the world was just they wanted something. They wanted to feel some sort of way that to just be able to sleep that night. And I remember you got on Scott Van Pelt's show, and you just gave that whole perspective of what it's like as a player, the brotherhood of football, and what you can only imagine what Damar and his family are going through right now, and the world they drew to you.
mm.
It blew up all over the place, and you did such a great job that day.
Thank
Can
you.
you tell me a little bit about what was going through your mind before you had to jump on in front of the camera in front of millions of people that were just hoping and praying for something good to happen, but also keeping it real and giving that perspective of the athlete?
I tried to get out of it first. I,
For real.
uh, yeah, I didn't want to. You don't think that you actually have the capabilities to put it in perspective. Um, I'd called my wife when it first happened, and I was like, "Babe, I think this kid just died." Um, and we have a son that plays football at Arizona State now, and so and I love the game so much, and it's given me literally everything that I have, and so it's that part of it, um, and I was just so sad, like I just was, like I was so sad. And I was crying, and I was sometimes cussing, depending on who I was talking to. And I remember, so my hotel is right across the street from the studio, and they text me and they say, "Can you be over here soon?" And I was like, "Well, I don't feel like we really need to do the show." I was like, "I do football and I draw up plays," and they was like, "Nah, we have to talk about it." And so I prayed. I prayed that I do a good job. My wife's big on meditation and breathing, and so I would text or call her in between every segment. So every commercial, I would text or call her, and she would talk me down. And every segment, man, I would just cry. And then when it was time to start again, I'd wipe my face. I do whatever breathing technique my wife told me to do, and then I just sit down and tell the truth. I think I knew at that time the world didn't need an analyst. Uh, the world needed a human. The world needed somebody who could understand it. And what's crazy is there's probably like only a few former players who could understand it. You're one of them. You know, I'm one of them. You know what I'm saying? And so I think looking back on it, I was the perfect person for the assignment, uh, but I still didn't want it. So it was, and so many people have come up to me since, man, and been very, uh, very kind to me about that night. And I think that night definitely gave people a different perception of me. I think career wise, it's helped me so much and helped people see me so, differently. And with all that, man, I'd give all of that back if Damar never had to go through it. if his family never had to go through it, if his mom never had to come out of the stands. And so, that night is still a hard one for me, even though I know how much it did for me personally.
Absolutely. See, it's funny how you look back as yes, it helped you personally, but for him to not have to go through that. But thank God, Damar is doing well now, and
Yeah,
he's
man.
living his life to the fullest as he can. And it is great to see the impact that he's had on the world since that crazy day that where life could have went a total different direction. So I'm happy to see. And as we mentioned before, the brotherhood that football brings leads me to this. Your biggest endeavor now, the pivot with Shannon Tatum. I mean, you got Shannon Crowder on there. You
Yeah.
got Fred Taylor, yourself, guys coming together, be able to create this platform for athletes and just all sports entertainment around the world to share their stories with you, but be comfortable with you. Got Kevin Hart on there joking around, like that
Yeah,
is
man.
something the
Yeah.
coolest thing. And how does that come together? Obviously, Alicia helping you guys with the producing, but to see
Yeah.
where it started to where you are today, man, it's awesome.
Yeah, thank you, bro. And like I said again, man, thank you for joining us. It like now it's so much pressure, because people their expectations
You invited to the party now, Michael Rubin's party, brother.
hey, that's why you gotta ask, bro. You gotta ask. Um, it's been so much fun, and to give people that sort of space to tell their stories and for them to be that comfortable with you, for very famous, very accomplished, very successful people to sit down with us and not necessarily like have those boundaries, right? And to feel like this is a space where they can be themselves, and a space where we won't do things to them or put them in bad situations has been wonderful, has been beautiful. And for us to dive deeper into who people are rather than how many songs you've sang, how many shows you've done, how many touchdowns you've scored, how many baskets you've dropped, how many home runs you've hit. I think that's been the greatest thing or the greatest accomplishment of our entire platform. And we just want to keep getting better, which is hard, right? Because you start your first year, you have Shaq, you have Kevin Hart, you have all these people, and now the expectation is like that, where that's where you'll be all the time. And for me, man, it's about content, right? It's about impact. And if we can continue to do that, which I believe we will, um, that's what we aim to do when we started, and we can't let that be convoluted by success, right? We can't allow the success to cloud the original intent, which was to deliver high quality content that impacted people. And we want, to keep that main thing our first priority.
I think you guys are doing a hell of a job. Obviously, you got a great mixture between yourself as the storyteller. Fred is the OG. The
Yeah.
few went on. Then you got Channing on there,
Fred.
the clown. joking around.
Yeah.
You got a great mixture between you
Thank you.
guys fit well together, man, and it's doing awesome. And before I let go, our podcast is sponsored by the Plymouth Rock, the New Jersey Teachers Insurance Plan, and I want to dive into a little bit of an educator question for you. So obviously, teachers are huge educators in our lives and have big impacts in our lives. Is there a certain teacher that's really stuck out to
Ooh,
you growing up that you can look back on and say, you know what, that person really helped me and paved the pathway for myself, Ryan Clark, as the individual, as a young kid, to now
man.
that you remember as a grown man.
Man, there's so many. There's so many
Mhm.
people who had a hand in helping me. But Miss Williams, Miss Williams was at a school called CT Jeanette, and I was only there for a year. I went to another elementary until the fourth grade, and I went there for the fifth grade. And it was my first time of ever like switching classes. Right, it was the first time I'd ever done it, and at the time, like there was tiers, like there was like honors, and then there was like tier one, tier two, whatever. And I was in tier one, which was like smart kids, but you weren't in honors courses. And it's probably like 2 months into school, and she's like, "You need to be in honors. Like we need to change your curriculum. We need to change your schedule." She's like, "You're smart enough. You're capable enough. You communicate well enough. I think it'll help you. I think it'll challenge you. I don't believe you're being challenged." And she spoke to some of the administrators, to the principals, to the counselor, and they moved me up, and it was her just seeing something in me and saying that I belonged somewhere else and being willing to put her name on it. It changed my life because now I go to a different middle school when I'm in honors courses, and I'm in high school and you're in honors courses, and people pay more attention to you. People give you more time. People expect more of you. They push you more. But had she never just seen that in me and allowed me to continue in the role that I was put in, I never get that push. I never get that opportunity. I'm never challenged in that way. And so it wasn't just her uh, taking a liking in the kid. It was her seeing something bigger for a child than he could see for himself, than his parents could see, and taking the initiative to make sure he got the opportunities she felt like he deserved.
And I love to hear stories like that because we all have different teachers that have stood out in our lives that helped us along the way. And we hear about Miss Williams for you. I'm sure she's an angel. So once again,
Man,
I appreciate you coming on a Couple Believe podcast. You're my brother for life, and that brother that we share. Even though we didn't play on the same team, same college, the respect is still there. And I
oh,
thank you again for
absolutely.
being a guest here.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. I was excited when you hit me up. I'm glad we were able to get it to work, man, and get it done.
Much love to you, my brother.
All love, boy.
Thank you for listening to a Couple Believe podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and all audio platforms.